Alright, this is lesson 3.3, and students are going to first estimate and then calculate the products of a decimal number and a whole number. So we're going to be doing some multiplication here. If you have your books open to page 194, in our first set of examples, we are going to multiply decimals by first using repeated addition to find an estimate. That will help us place the decimal point when we're finished with the actual calculating and the multiplication. The whole number represents the number of times the decimal is used as an addend. So we're going to add up the decimal multiple times. Place the decimal point in the product in the same number of places as the decimal factor. I'll explain what all is. We look through some examples. So in the first example, we have a whole number 4 times 83 hundredths. So if we think about them as adding 83 hundredths, 83 hundredths, 83 hundredths, 83 hundredths, we're going to have something hundredths when we're finished. There are 2 decimal places. The decimal is something in the hundredths place, so our answer has to be in the hundredths place. But the actual multiplication that we do here is regular multiplication. We just ignore the decimal point. Now I know some of you have been using lattice multiplication, and if you are familiar with lattice, you certainly can still use lattice multiplication to get your numbers 3, 3, 2, and then use the same strategy here to know that we multiplied something in the hundredths, so our answer has to be something in the hundredths. Okay? This example, we have 3 times 14 and 2 tenths. So here, this is what we're doing in our head to estimate first. 14 and 2 tenths, 14 and 2 tenths, 14 and 2 tenths. We're going to have something and some tenths when we're finished. There's one number after the decimal place here. So there's a 1 number after the decimal place here. The multiplication of this, they do regular multiplication to find 426, and then they place the decimal, so it's 42 and 6 tenths. I want to get to one where we actually have to do the multiplication ourselves here. Alright, so example number 3, they give us the opportunity to write in, so pick up your pencil and you're going to do this one with me. We're going to walk through the process that they use. Okay, so we're going to start by estimating. So we're going to say 4 times about 1 is 4. Our answer should be somewhere around 4 when we do this. Now, if I add up and I do repeated addition here, and I have 4 groups of 95 hundredths, when I add those 4 numbers up, I get 3.80. So now let's check to see that we can multiply this and get the same answer. So 0.95 or 95 hundredths has 2 decimal places. That means there are 2 numbers after the decimal place. That means our answer is going to have 2 decimal places. We're dealing with hundredths here, so we're going to have hundredths in our answer. Now we can just do the regular multiplication over here. Depending on what your strategy is, this is a traditional algorithm for multiplication. We're going to do 4 times 5 is 20, and I put the 2 into the tenths place. Then I'm going to do 4 times 9, and 4 times 9 is 36 plus the 2 that I put up there. So 36, 38. Put the 3 over here. Then I do 4 times 0 is 0 plus the 3 is 3. So I have 380. But I have to remember to place the decimal point 2 places from the right. 1, 2 places from the right. So I get 3.80, which is pretty close to 4. So I know that I'm right, or my answer is reasonable. There are 3 got it's on the bottom of the page. I want you to reason it out in your head about what you think, and we're going to do letter A here together. So 5 times 0.25, that's not very much. 0.25 is less than 1. a lot less than 1, so my answer's going to be pretty small here. I'm going to line this up and write 0.25 times 5. I'm going to count and see there are 2 numbers after the decimal point, so I have to make sure in my answer I have 2 numbers after the decimal point. Okay? Now I'm just going to do regular multiplication. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 more is 12. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 1 more makes 1. And since I had 2 numbers after the decimal point there, I need to put 2 numbers after the decimal point here. My answer is 1.25. And I go back and think about, is that reasonable? Well, this 5 times 0.25, that's pretty small. My number should be getting smaller, so this is a reasonable answer. All right, I want you to give this a try with the next ones. You line it up, count the decimal places, do the multiplication, pause the video, and then turn it back on to check to see how you did. All right, for letter B, you should have gotten 35 and 76 hundredths, and letter C, 23 and 67 hundredths. I think the challenge for some of us in doing this is just going to be that review of multiplication. As we continue on and we get into the next set, page 195. On page 195, it has this crazy message at the top about annexing zeros, and that sounds pretty unfamiliar to you probably. This is when we have numbers that might be a bit more challenging, that are more than just one digit factors, and we don't always have enough places, and when we need extra places, it's like having an empty swoop. When we're swooping, we need to add some zeros. That's what it means to annex a zero. So it sounds really crazy. It's not so bad. Looking at the first example here, we're going to start things off in the same way. We're going to do 2 times 18 thousandths. That's a really small number. We have 3 decimal places, 3 digits after the decimal, so we need to have 3 digits after the decimal here. But if we had done this multiplication and we had worked this out ourselves, we would have noticed that when we multiply 0.018 times 2, we would get 8 times 2 is 16. 2 plus 1 is 3. And then 2 times 0, we'd get an answer of 36. But in order to have 3 digits, we have to write that 0 down so we can put the decimal 3 digits over. And if we check it by adding, of course, we're going to get the same thing. We're going to get 36. We got to add these zeros in that we normally wouldn't need necessarily to do, but we need to have a place to have another spot after the decimal point. As we work through some more, here we're going to do 4 times 12 thousandths. So we're going to do 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 1 is 4. And then I kind of could be done. But since there are 3 decimal places in the factor, we're going to annex a 0 to make sure we have 3 decimal places in the answer. And I can put my decimal there. And we could check by adding. Notice my decimals are all lined up here. Then we could do 8, 4, 0. Put a 0 in front of the decimal point and make it official. All right, you try these. I'll set the first one up for you. We're going to do 0.02. I always put the longer number on the top of my multiplication problem, whichever one has more digits in it. And I'm going to multiply by 3. Okay, you do the multiplication on all 3 of these. Make sure you're counting how many digits there are after or in the factors, and make sure there are that many digits in your product, in your answer. Pause the video. All right, hopefully your multiplication worked out well for you. The answer for the first, got it, letter D, is 6/100ths, or 0.06. Letter E is 96/100ths, 0.96. And the last one, letter F, was 495 thousandths, or 0.495, with 3 digits after the decimal place. Keep practicing that multiplication, and these the decimal is just a little detail that you have to keep track of. We're going to do one more example. This one has a story to go with it. We have to do a little bit of reading. On the top of page 196. A batch of trail mix calls for 1 2/10 pounds of dry cereal. Nigella is making 5 batches of this trail mix. She already has 2.2 pounds of cereal. How many more pounds of dry cereal does she need? Man, I see all kinds of key words in there, and lots of steps that might be involved. But I think the first thing we need to know is if we're making 5 batches of trail mix and it's 1 2/10 pounds per batch, we need to figure out how much trail mix or how much cereal do we need for the trail mix. So first we multiply 1 2/10 pound times 5 batches. So we need a total of 6 pounds of dry cereal. Then we note that she already has 2.2 pounds, and we need to know how many more pounds she has. So 6.0, subtract the 2.2 pounds we already have. She needs 3.8 pounds more. So be careful when we have a problem like this. We have 3 numbers that you know which numbers go with which and what we need to do. You can probably bet that in our practice you'll have to do some multiplication with those decimals, since that is the skill that we are all now capable of doing. Okay, so good luck.